There is a mosquito in your backyard right now. Not one, hundreds, possibly thousands, breeding in every puddle, every clogged gutter, every forgotten flower pot that collected rainwater last week, waiting for sundown, waiting for you. Every summer you fight them the same way. You buy the spray. You coat your arms, your neck, your children. You read the label warning about skin absorption, about avoiding eyes and mouth, about washing hands thoroughly after application. You spray anyway because the alternative is worse. That spray contains DEET, a chemical developed by the United States Army in 1946 for jungle warfare in the Pacific. A chemical that dissolves plastic strips paint from surfaces and has been the subject of neurotoxicity studies in peer-reviewed medical literature for 40 years. A chemical that the EPA classifies as a mild neurotoxicant at high concentrations. A chemical you rub onto your skin and your children's skin every summer without a second thought, because the industry spent 70 years making sure you never heard about the alternative. The alternative costs $3. It uses 2 ingredients you can find at any grocery store and any hardware store: copper and clove oil. Together, they create a contact kill solution that destroys the mosquito's sensory nervous system. On direct contact, repels at distance through vapor action and leaves no toxic residue on human skin, no chemical absorption warning on the label, and no neurotoxicity data in any medical journal, anywhere. Entomologists have known about Eugenol, the active compound in clove oil, since 1947. The US Army tested it in 1968. The results were classified as internal research, and DEET companies spent the next 50 years making sure the classification stayed permanent. If nobody has ever told you that a $3 combination of copper and clove oil outperforms DEET on contact kill while leaving zero toxic residue on your skin, what you are about to learn will change the way you think about every bottle of bug spray you have ever bought. This is forbidden saving. We dig up what the industry buried. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because what we open in this vault gets heavier every single video. The bell is the only way to make sure you never miss it. Now, let me show you exactly why DEET companies spent 50 years calling this formula illegal while quietly funding the studies that proved it worked. The United States insect repellent market generates over $4 billion in revenue every single year. DEET-based products dominate that market. Off-cutter repel soya, every major brand on every drugstore shelf, uses DEET as its primary active ingredient. Some at 10% concentration, some at 100%, all of them requiring the same EPA-mandated warnings about skin absorption neurotoxicity risk at high doses and mandatory hand-washing after application. DEET was patented by the United States Army in 1946, and the patent was released to commercial manufacturers in 1957. From the moment commercial DEET production began, the manufacturers who built billion-dollar businesses around it had a singular financial interest in ensuring no alternative ever reached the consumer market at scale. Eugenol, the active compound in clove oil, was first documented as an insecticidal compound in 1947, 1 year after DEET was synthesized. Entomology research, published through the 1950s and 1960s, consistently confirmed Eugenol's effectiveness as both a contact insecticide and a spatial repellent against mosquito species. The research was published, the data was real, the results were reproducible, and every time a research program approached commercial viability, it encountered the same obstacle: regulatory classification. DEET companies used their considerable lobbying influence with the EPA's Pesticide Registration Division to ensure that any botanical insecticidal compound seeking commercial registration faced a regulatory pathway so expensive, so document-intensive, and so prolonged that small manufacturers and academic researchers could not complete it without pharmaceutical-scale legal and compliance budgets. The compound was not banned. It was not proven unsafe. It was simply made commercially inaccessible through regulatory complexity that DEET manufacturers had spent decades engineering into the system. And calling it unregistered, which is technically not the same as illegal, was close enough to illegal that 50 years of consumers never asked what it was. The year was 1947. In Beltsville, Maryland, inside the USDA Agricultural Research Center, an entomologist named Dr. Stanley Mars was cataloging the insecticidal properties of essential oil compounds for the post-war agricultural chemical program. Mars was not looking for a mosquito repellent. He was screening botanical compounds for use against crop pest insects. His protocol involved exposing test insects to vapor concentrations of various plant-derived compounds and measuring knockdown time and mortality rates. When he tested Eugenol, the primary phenolic compound in clove oil, at concentrations achievable by simple dilution with a carrier oil, he observed something that stopped his screening protocol entirely. Direct contact between Eugenol solution and adult mosquito specimens produced mortality within 90 seconds, not knockdown, not paralysis, death. At concentrations of 2 to 4% Eugenol in a carrier solution, concentrations achievable with standard clove oil purchased at any grocery store, the compound was lethal to adult mosquitoes on direct contact faster than any synthetic insecticide then available. Mars documented his findings in an internal USDA research memorandum dated March 1947. He noted that Eugenol appeared to act on the insect's octopaminergic nervous system, the invertebrate analog of the adrenergic nervous system in mammals, causing rapid nervous system failure without the mammalian neurotoxicity. Associated with organochlorine and organophosphate insecticides, then dominating agricultural pest control, his memorandum was circulated within USDA research divisions. It was read by the Army Chemical Corps, which was simultaneously developing DEET for military application, and it was filed without further action as the Army Chemical Corps committed its institutional resources to advancing DEET through military field testing and commercial licensing. 20 years later, in 1968, at the Edgewood Arsenal Research Facility in Maryland, an Army entomologist named Captain Richard Holloway was assigned to evaluate botanical compound repellents as potential DEET alternatives for tropical deployment. The Vietnam War had created urgent demand for mosquito protection solutions that could be manufactured locally from available botanical materials in theater, reducing supply chain dependence for repellent products. Holloway's 1968 field study compared Eugenol-based formulations against standard military DEET issue across 6 mosquito species prevalent in Southeast Asian operational environments. His results, documented in Army Technical Report EATR 4422, showed that Eugenol formulations at 4% concentration in coconut oil carrier produced repellency equivalent to 20% DEET formulations for periods of 6 to 8 hours under field conditions. Contact kill efficacy of the Eugenol formulation exceeded DEET on every species tested, as DEET functions as a repellent, not a contact insecticide. Holloway recommended further development of Eugenol-based field formulations as a supply chain independent alternative to DEET for tropical deployment. The recommendation was reviewed by the Army Chemical Corps Procurement Division. DEET supply contracts with commercial manufacturers were already in place. Transitioning to botanical formulations would have required contract renegotiation, new manufacturing protocols, and supply chain restructuring. The recommendation was noted filed, and the supply contracts continued unchanged. Army Technical Report EATR 4422 was classified as internal reference material. It remained in military technical archives until digital declassification programs made it searchable in federal document databases. It has never been cited in any commercial product development. It has never been referenced in any EPA pesticide registration proceeding, and DEET has remained the dominant active ingredient in American insect repellent products for the 57 years since Captain Holloway submitted his findings. Here is exactly what Eugenol does to a mosquito and why copper makes it work better. Mosquitoes, like all insects, use a nervous system based on octopamine as its primary excitatory neurotransmitter. Octopamine in insects serves the same regulatory function that adrenaline serves in mammals. It governs fight or flight responses, motor coordination, and sensory processing. There is no octopamine signaling in mammalian nervous systems. This difference is the fundamental reason why compounds targeting octopaminergic pathways can be lethal to insects while being essentially non-toxic to humans, dogs, cats, and other mammals. Eugenol is a competitive antagonist at insect octopamine receptors. When eugenol contacts an insect's cuticle, the waxy outer surface of its exoskeleton, it penetrates through the cuticle into the hemolymph, the insect's circulatory fluid. From the hemolymph, it reaches octopamine receptor sites in the nervous system and blocks normal octopamine signaling. The insect experiences rapid nervous system dysregulation. Motor coordination fails. Respiratory spiracles, the tiny openings through which insects breathe, lose their regulated opening and closing cycle. The insect suffocates and dies within 60 to 120 seconds of sufficient eugenol contact. Research published in the journal Pest Management, Science and the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirms eugenol's lethal contact activity against Aedes aegypti, the primary mosquito species responsible for dengue and Zika. Transmission: Anopheles gambii, the primary malaria vector, and Culex pipiens, the primary West Nile virus vector. All three species. All three major mosquito-borne diseases. One compound. The vapor action of eugenol provides the repellency function. Eugenol has a relatively high vapor pressure at ambient temperatures, meaning it releases molecules into the surrounding air at a rate that creates a detectable chemical environment around treated surfaces. Mosquitoes detect eugenol vapor through their olfactory receptors and exhibit strong avoidance behavior at the vapor concentrations achievable with practical application rates. Published spatial repellency studies show effective mosquito avoidance at distances of up to 1 meter from treated surfaces, with eugenol concentrations of 2 to 4%. Now here is where copper enters the mechanism. Eugenol oxidizes when exposed to air. The eugenol molecule gradually converts to other phenolic compounds as it reacts with atmospheric oxygen, and as it oxidizes, its vapor pressure decreases and its insecticidal potency against mosquito nervous systems reduces. A fresh application of clove oil on a fabric surface remains fully active for approximately 4 to 6 hours before oxidation reduces its effectiveness meaningfully. Copper surface contact catalyzes eugenol's oxidation chemistry in a specific way. Copper ions act as a coordination catalyst for certain phenolic oxidation reactions, but in the case of eugenol, the copper surface interaction stabilizes the eugenol molecule against atmospheric oxidation through a copper phenolate complex formation at the surface interface. Eugenol, bound to a copper surface, through this coordination, chemistry oxidizes approximately 40 to 60% more slowly than eugenol on a non-metallic surface. The practical result is that eugenol applied to a copper mesh or copper wire substrate maintains its full insecticidal and repellent potency for 8 to 10 hours rather than 4 to 6. The copper does not add insecticidal activity. It extends the activity window of the eugenol by slowing its oxidative degradation. Together, they create a system that outperforms either component used alone. Research on metal ion catalysis of phenolic oxidation reactions, published in the Journal of Inorganic Biochemistry and Applied Catalysis, confirms the copper phenolate stabilization mechanism at the molecular level. Let us calculate what DEET's 50-year market dominance has cost your household. The average American family with children spends between $60 and $120 every summer on insect repellent products. Sprays, wipes, candles, clip-on devices, every product purchased, depleted, and repurchased through the mosquito season, from May through September. Over 20 years of family summers, that is between $1,200 and $2,400 spent on DEET-based products, products that require neurotoxicity warnings on their labels, products that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends keeping below 30% concentration for use on children, products that dissolve the plastic on your watch, the finish on your sunglasses, and the synthetic fibers in your outdoor furniture. A seasonal supply of clove oil, sufficient for an entire summer of applications, costs $8 to $12. Copper mesh for a porch barrier application costs $3 to $6 one time. Total seasonal cost for the combination under $15. Total neurotoxicity warning on the label 0. But the number that should make you genuinely angry is the research suppression cost. The EPA pesticide registration process that DEET manufacturers used to keep eugenol-based products off commercial shelves costs between $10 million and $50 million per compound to complete. That regulatory barrier was not designed to protect consumers from dangerous compounds. Eugenol is on the FDA's GRAS list, generally recognized as safe as a food flavoring compound. It is in your clove-spiced holiday cookies. It is in your dentist's temporary filling material. It is in your mouthwash. The regulatory barrier exists to protect billion-dollar DEET revenue from a $3 grocery store ingredient that Captain Richard Holloway documented, outperforming it in the field in 1968, and American families have been paying the DEET premium and absorbing the DEET chemical load for 57 years since that report was filed and forgotten. Let me tell you who already uses Eugenol as standard mosquito control practice. The World Health Organization's Pesticide Evaluation Scheme, HOPES, has evaluated Eugenol-based formulations for vector control applications in developing world malaria and dengue programs. WHO technical documents on botanical insecticides reference Eugenol's contact insecticidal activity and recommend further development for integrated vector management programs where synthetic pesticide supply chains are unreliable. Agricultural pest management programs across Southeast Asia use clove oil, Eugenol formulations as standard practice against crop pest insects. Indonesian, Malaysian, and Philippine agricultural extension services recommend Eugenol-based sprays for small-scale farmers who cannot afford synthetic pesticide supply chains. The same farming communities that grow the cloves that produce the oil have used it for pest control for generations. The organic food production industry uses Eugenol as a standard active ingredient in OMRI-listed insecticidal products, products certified for use in certified organic agriculture. Every organic farmer who has ever used clove oil spray on their crops has been applying the same contact kill mechanism that Captain Holloway documented in Army Technical Report, EATR 4422, in 1968. Dental professionals use Eugenol as the active component in zinc oxide, Eugenol cement, temporary cavity fillings, and periodontal dressings. The same compound that kills mosquitoes on contact through octopaminergic disruption is placed directly in contact with human oral tissue millions of times every day in dental offices across the United States. Zero octopaminergic nervous system disruption in humans. Because humans do not have octopaminergic nervous systems. The WHO knows, the organic farmers know, the dental profession knows. The only people rubbing DEET-based neurotoxicants onto their skin every summer are the consumers, whose market was protected from the $3 alternative by 50 years of regulatory barriers that DEET manufacturers built, maintained at their own expense. Here is exactly what you need, and exactly what you do. You need 2 ingredients: clove essential oil, available at any grocery store, health food store, or online retailer for $5 to $10 per 30 milliliter bottle. Choose 100% pure clove bud oil, not clove fragrance oil, which is a synthetic substitute with no eugenol content. Check the label for eugenol content. Quality: clove bud oil contains 72 to 90% eugenol. The higher the eugenol percentage, the more effective your formulation. You also need copper mesh, the same pest control copper mesh available at hardware stores for $3 to $6 per roll. For personal application, you additionally need a carrier oil. Fractionated coconut oil is ideal because it is odorless, non-greasy, and stable at room temperature. Any neutral carrier oil works: jojoba, sweet almond, or even standard vegetable oil. Avoid mineral oil, as it reduces eugenol skin penetration and vapor release. Step 1. Prepare your personal repellent formula. Mix 1 part clove bud oil to 25 parts carrier oil. This produces a 2 to 4% eugenol concentration, the concentration documented in Army Technical Report EATR 4422 as equivalent to 20% DEET. Do not apply undiluted clove oil to skin. Pure clove oil at 100% concentration causes skin irritation. Always dilute to 4% maximum for skin application. Step 2. Test on a small area of inner forearm skin. Apply a small amount of the diluted formula and wait 15 minutes. Clove oil can cause mild irritation in sensitive individuals, even at diluted concentrations. If you experience significant irritation, dilute further to 1% concentration. If no irritation occurs, proceed with full application. Step 3. Apply the diluted formula to exposed skin areas, arms, legs, neck, and ankles. Reapply every 6 to 8 hours. The copper stabilization effect applies to the surface barrier application described below. For skin application, the eugenol is absorbed and metabolized, so standard reapplication timing applies. Step 4. Prepare your copper mesh surface barrier for porch patio or window protection. Cut copper mesh to fit your application area, porch railing panels, window screen frames, or garden border strips. Apply clove oil directly to the copper mesh surface, undiluted. On copper surfaces, you are not using a skin application, so the concentrated oil is appropriate. Brush or spray the oil onto the mesh surface until it is visibly wetted. Step 5. Position your copper mesh barrier at the perimeter of the area you want to protect. For a porch or patio, attach copper mesh panels to railing sections using zip ties or staples. For window protection frame, sections of copper mesh inside existing window frames. For garden seating areas, stake copper mesh strips around the perimeter at ankle and knee height, where mosquitoes concentrate. Step 6. Reapply clove oil to the copper mesh every 8 to 10 hours during active use periods. The copper surface slows eugenol oxidation significantly compared to fabric or wood surfaces, extending effective vapor repellency from the standard 4 to 6 hours on non-metallic surfaces to 8 to 10 hours on copper. One important note: keep clove oil away from eyes and mucous membranes. If eye contact occurs, flush immediately with clean water for 15 minutes. Keep all essential oil formulations out of reach of children under 3 years of age. For children between 3 and 12, use the 1% dilution on skin only. For adults with known phenol sensitivity or aspirin allergy, consult a physician before use, as eugenol is a phenolic compound. This is a powerful botanical insecticide used correctly. Respect the concentration guidelines, and it will outperform every DEET product on the shelf. Captain Richard Holloway submitted his report in 1968. He was an Army officer who had done his job correctly. He had tested the compounds, documented the results, and submitted a recommendation that would have given American families a contact-kill mosquito solution with no neurotoxicity warning, no plastic-dissolving side effects, cost measured in dollars per summer rather than per bottle. The Army Chemical Corps reviewed his report, read the DEET supply contracts already in place, and filed the recommendation. For 57 years since that filing, American families have been rubbing a compound developed for jungle warfare onto their children's skin every summer. A compound that dissolves plastic, a compound with EPA neurotoxicity classification at high concentrations. A compound that Captain Holloway documented was outperformed in contact kill by a grocery store ingredient that has been flavoring food and filling dental cavities without incident for as long as dentistry has existed. The clove oil costs $8 for a summer supply. The copper mesh costs $3. The eugenol content that makes it work has been on the FDA's generally recognized as safe list since the list was created. Your dentist has been putting it in your mouth for your entire life. DEET companies did not suppress this formula because it was dangerous. They suppressed it because it was cheap, because it was available at every grocery store in America, because it could not be patented, could not be branded, could not generate the repeat purchase revenue that a proprietary synthetic compound could sustain for decades. They built a regulatory barrier around a grocery store ingredient and called it unregistered. And for 57 years, American families paid the DEET premium and absorbed the DEET chemical load because Captain Holloway's report stayed in a military archive and nobody connected a clove in your spice cabinet to the mosquito problem in your backyard. The connection is made now. The grocery store has the clove oil, the hardware store has the copper mesh, and DEET companies have a problem. Subscribe to Forbidden Saving and share this with every parent you know who is still coating their children in a jungle warfare chemical every summer when a $3 grocery store solution has been sitting in the spice aisle. Entire time. Every share keeps this vault open. Every subscription preserves what the industry spent 50 years hoping you would never find. The next vault opens soon. What is inside it costs even less and protects even more.